Hey guys, how's it going? It's time for the Geared Up Transmissions, Geared Up Tip of the Week. And this week we're talking about fishing for spawning bass. The spawn is going to be here and there's fish on the beds right now. And there's a couple things I like to do when I'm fishing for spawning bass. You're going to have fish that you're going to be able to see, and then there's also going to be fish that you won't be able to see. Ultimately, when you can actually see the fish on the bed, one of the best things that you can do is pitch a white jig and a white trailer in there on that spawning fish. It's a big profile bait, and this bait here really gets their attention, and not too many guys throw a white jig when it comes to sight fishing like this. A lot of people use plastics, and a jig works really good for me. And a lot of times too, with this jig, what you want to do is aggravate them. And so what I mean by that is, you can take this jig and you can throw it in there on that bed and just reel it by really quick. Throw it in there and just reel it by. Don't even attempt to catch the fish when you throw it in there. And then when you get that fish to where he's, seeing this jig go by constantly, have a follow-up bait. And so when it comes to a follow-up bait, one of the best things you can use is just a little Texas rig Senko. So what I got here is just a little Senko with a little 3/16 ounce pro tungsten weight, just Texas rigged like this. And what I'm going to do is just put a little peg on here, and I'm just going to pitch this into the bed after I've taken this white jig and really pissed them off. Sometimes you can throw this jig in there and get them to bite this too, but there's a little bit of an art to aggravating these fish. If you're not using a jig like this, another really good thing to use when you're bed fishing is a big hair jig, a big white hair jig. And what you're going to do with that is you're just going to throw that in that bed just like you do with this, and you're going to piss them off. You're going to take that jig and you're going to hit them in the head with it, get them fired up, and when that fish is locked on the bed, he's not going to be too happy if you keep doing that. And then you just throw something in there that you can get a really good hook set with, and that's what I like to do there. If you're blind fishing and you can't see the beds, one of the things I like to do on lakes where the water's really dirty is I like to throw a lizard with just a real lightweight Texas rig like this. And most of the time you can bet, if the water's real dirty, that those fish are going to be spawning around wood. They're going to be real close to the bank. And so a real lightweight lizard, you can even throw them weightless. This one's just got a little 3/16 ounce pro tungsten weight on here. And this works really good and catches a lot of big fish this time of the year. This is if you want to fish slow. You can also do a couple other things. You can throw a shaky head, little J-Town shaky head here, a little finesse worm. The BFL that was at Lake of the Ozarks last May, caught all the fish that I weighed in to get second place. I caught on this setup, and I was just blind casting it at the bank, trying to fish any wood, any stumps, and this works really good. Now, for any of those beds that are a little bit deeper, say you're, not exactly fishing the bank, but you're just kind of wanting to cover that water on a flat where they're spawning a couple foot of water, Carolina rig works really good. And so you're going to want to have Carolina rigged up. And the whole key with this is you can fan cast this all over a pocket and just drag down the middle of them. And all those beds that are away from the bank that you can't see with your eyes, where those fish are spawning, this is going to work really well for those fish if you're wanting to target that part of the pocket. Now, something that you can also do that not a lot of guys do, but I do this quite a bit. When the fish start spawning, is I'll throw a little methylate trick worm like this wacky rig. For whatever reason, I don't know what it is. Probably something to do with fish being in a certain mood this time of the year. But if you throw a pink worm during the spawn, the fish really eat this thing, and that's pretty much anywhere here in the Ozarks, and you'll catch a lot of nice fish just throwing a worm like that. And not too many guys throw that weird color, but for whatever reason it works during the spawn. I haven't done much with this outside of fishing, for spawning fish, but I wouldn't be surprised if it worked year round. It's just something that I don't have confidence in. I've never really done. Now, if you're wanting to fish fast, and say you're practicing for a tournament, or you're just trying to find fish that are on the beds, there's a couple things that I like to do in practice if I can't necessarily see those fish that are spawning. One of them is to throw a chatterbait. So what I got here is a chatterbait, and this thing really gets some fish that are fired on those beds fired up. And all you're gonna do is just take this and just slow roll it up around the bank. And if you're practicing, put a keeper over your hook. That way when that big fish comes up and swirls at this thing, you know, you're not gonna stick them. That's gonna allow you to cover a lot of water and get some bites. Another thing that you can do is you can go to top water. Top water starts really working good when these fish get up around the bank and they start spawning. And there's pretty much two top waters that I like to throw. One of them's a Giant Slayer buzzbait. This buzzbait has a really big hook in it, and that's really good because sometimes I'm going to be throwing this buzzbait back in some areas in some of these pockets where there's a lot of wood and stuff, and that trailer hook, you know, tends to get hung up a lot. And so I really like the big hook that this buzzbait's got in it. It sits a lot further back in the buzzbait than most of them. And the other thing about this buzzbait, it's got a really tough wire. This wire right here is super durable, super tough, and that's what you need because, you know, really that buzzbait, the prop's just going to be spinning, and you want to be able to catch a lot of big fish on this buzzbait and hoist them out of that heavy cover, and not have to worry about your buzzbait breaking and having to bend the wire and tune in every single fish that you catch. And so those are some of the things that I really like about these Giant Slayer buzzbaits. And the guy that makes these, Chris Randall, he's a buzzbait junkie. He loves making buzzbaits and throwing buzzbaits. And so, you know, I know that this buzzbait is made by a guy that has a passion for fishing buzzbaits. And so that's why this is the one that I throw. And one thing you can do too is you can throw a bait called a Pop R. This is an old school bait. It's been around before I was even born. And the whole deal with this is you're just going to throw it out there and just fan cast up around the bank in those pockets. And throw it out there, let all the ripples just go away from the bait. That way you give that fish a chance. If he's sitting there and he watches it hit the water, he's going to swim up and look at it. And he's going to be watching it, and when you just give it a little twitch, he's going to eat it. And you just give it short little pops. The key with this is you're getting that bait over the fish's head when he's down there spawning. And that really tends to piss him off and get him fired up. Because really, you know, a fish that's on a bed, he's not trying to eat your bait as so much as he's just trying to get it out of the area. He's guarding that nest. So you want to use baits that are going to hang in there, hang in that strike zone up around the bed, and, you know, drive those fish crazy.